Hello and welcome to another podcast on ICANN Media. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. We're coming to you from Calgary. We're at the Oil and Gas Awards Industry Summit. Joining us right now is Pete Arrigoni with Kenworth Trucks. And Pete, you were here talking about safety when it comes to motor vehicles in the oil industry.
Absolutely. We participate in the Oil and Gas Awards, have all year. We sponsor this event, and predominantly most of the discussions surround safety, and that's usually one of the largest factors for a lot of our customers.
What are some of the innovations that are happening as far as the industry goes when it comes to the oil and gas and the vehicles used up in, say, the oil sands?
Sure. I think most of the discussion is around autonomy these days. It's the interesting thing. It's the sexy thing.
Sorry, when you say autonomy, we're talking driverless vehicles.
Correct.
Okay.
The reality is that we are working towards gradually getting to that stage, but in the meantime, we have a lot of different technologies, both active and passive, that we utilize in our vehicles to help improve the safety and reduce accidents. Most of those technologies are things like lane departure, adaptive cruise and braking, ABS, stability control. A lot of these things, they're widely available today in the industry. And of course, we spend a lot of time and effort on the passive side of things, which are, crush safety for cabs. We recently redesigned pretty much all of our products and spent a considerable amount of time and effort making sure that those structures are safer and an improvement over existing products.
So we'll come back to the autonomous vehicles in a moment. One of the questions that came out in the discussion that was just held is too much information getting to the drivers now? Because, I mean, you even look at some of the smart cars that are out there. It seems like there's a lot of stuff being fed to the driver. I imagine it's perhaps tenfold when you're talking about these big trucks.
Absolutely. That's a very difficult question to answer, and one that gets asked quite frequently. We are essentially in the process of developing pretty lengthy quantitative procedures for what is an acceptable interaction with one of these systems. The automotive industry follows some NHTSA guidelines, and so the trucking industry is basically following suit with the same. I can tell you that we spent a lot of time and effort with our suppliers integrating their technologies, so Bendix, adaptive cruise and braking. It's a very simple interaction with the driver that is no different than say looking at the outside air temperature. So you have a screen in front of you, and it is two pieces of information, right? You have your following distance and you have your speed, and that's really it. And so we're providing all the safety net of those features of active braking, but ultimately the driver is not participating in any of it until an event occurs, right? And then he will get a warning, and then it will interface with him. So
you mentioned the term event. Are there many accidents that are happening in this industry, and if so, where might they be happening?
That's a difficult question to answer. I'm not sure I know the answer to that question in terms of where they are happening.
I mean, would they be happening on the oil sands site, or are these involving vehicles that are maybe heading out on the highway delivering products and stuff?
I think there's probably a plethora of different types of accidents that are happening in different spaces. The highway industry, sees more head-ons and more fender benders, rear-end collisions than, say, the oil and gas industry would see. But by and large, all of these safety systems that are available, they're available for a highway vehicle, or they're available for a tanker truck in the oil and gas space. So it's certainly not limited to certain applications. We are targeting every vocation that we possibly can with all of these systems.
One of the comments made, I don't think it was you, I think it was one of the other panelists, said that if there is an accident between an automobile and one of the industry trucks, more often than not, it's the car driver's fault.
That's what statistics show. It doesn't mean certainly that 20% of those accidents is an acceptable rate for anyone. It just means that I think we need to be aware as a society that these vehicles carry a lot of mass, and that you cannot follow too closely. You cannot. I mean, it's a excuse me. It's it's something that we inherently feel that the trucks are the problem, and I think in reality we need to be more conscious and safer passenger car drivers, and that in itself is going to drive down a lot of these accident rates.
When you say 20%, you mean 20% is the amount that is at fault of the truck drivers, correct? It's a larger number. That's
that's an approximate number based on thousands of accidents from the late 90s to the mid 2000s. But yeah, I think the focus on active safety components is, it's really what we're trying to get at, is preventing these accidents from even occurring in the first place, or minimizing the severity of them.
Okay, back to the autonomous, the driverless vehicles. I was actually listening to a news program on the weekend where you had a proponent for them coming out saying they're coming. Really, these jobs aren't that difficult to turn into automated jobs. And then, of course, they had a driver come on and say the complete opposite. Where do you see this going?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the panel discussion, as an OEM, we are really sitting down and evaluating what are the different technologies that we need to make it happen, and we are building this roadmap of how we need to get there. I think you're going to see some interesting things like the trailing or the lead and follow type situation, where you have a lead truck and then you have follow trucks that could potentially, you could have a train. A road train. And so I think that's probably a more likely scenario. I think there are a lot of interfaces where the driver is still in need. And so, parking, maneuverability near docking at a warehouse. So, those types of actions, even in the oil field especially, you can do autonomy in mines, and they do it today, but they're very structured routes for dump trucks, and so it works in that application. And so I think you're going to find that some applications will adopt it sooner than others, but to say by and large it's going to happen for everybody and happen by 2025 is probably unrealistic.
Pete, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
We've been chatting with Pete Arrigoni here on ICANN Media.